Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. Today we're going to be canning up fig preserves. I'm going to be using a pretty low sugar recipe and with a minimal amount of processing. So if you're interested, stay tuned. So I have a whole bunch of figs that I got from my dad. My dad was awesome and he drove over here and brought a bunch of figs. And so we are going to go ahead and process as many of these as possible into some fig preserves. It's not going to be like a jam recipe. There's not a tremendous amount of sugar. I'm actually following the recipe that's on the National Center for Home Food Preservation. And I'm going to be canning them in the little jelly jars, the half pint jars, the taller ones with the narrow mouth. And we're just going to go ahead and bust out as many of these as possible. These are a little bit older figs, so several of them I'm noticing do have some mold on them, so I'm going to have to pick through them and just pick the best of the best, and I'll show you the process. It's really simple. All we're going to do, we're not going to skin them, and we're not going to peel them, we're not going to do any of that, and we're just going to cut them in quarters, and we're going to boil them in some simple syrup, and then jar them up. So I'll bring you along for the process. Okay, so you can see they're kind of mushy, but I think they're still going to be good. And I'm just going to pick through the ones that don't have any mold on them at all, and I'm going to weigh them. And my scales battery is running very low, so it will not hold for as long as I need it to. So I'm just going to weigh the bowl beforehand, 9 ounces. And then I'm going to weigh the bowl when I get it filled back up so we know how much we have. And may as well go ahead and cut them while we're at it. And in the background, I have the jelly jars in here, and these are sterilizing. The recipe is cooked for, I think it's 45 minutes. Yeah, 45 minutes for the pint jars. There is no timing on there for the half pint jars, so we're going to do the pint time, and that's 45 minutes, which is more than long enough. I don't really need to sterilize the jars. But they've been sitting in my garage for a little while and I just want to make sure they're super clean. So I'm just taking the extra step and being careful. And nearly every recipe that I came across called for it to not be stemmed or peeled. So it seems a pretty normal part of the process. And with these, typically what you're going to do and what the recipe calls for is that you want to actually boil these, or this recipe calls for you to pour boiling water over it and let it sit for 15 minutes and then drain the water. But most of these figs are so old, and well, not so old, but they're old enough that they're starting to crack and things like that. So I don't want to put them in boiling water to drain them because it's probably going to suck out a lot of the sugar. So I'm going to skip that step. If you have some nice firm figs, you want to go ahead and do that step. Okay, so we got them all cut up, and now we're going to weigh it. 7 pounds, 1 ounce, minus 9 pounds. That's what we got. 9 ounces, minus 9 ounces. Okay, so we still have 5 minutes going on that. So now, so it says to wash figs thoroughly and clean in clean water and drain. Do not peel or remove the stems. Cover figs with water and boil 2 minutes. Drain. Gently boil figs in a light syrup for 5 minutes. It doesn't say how much light syrup though. We'll just make one batch and hope that works. So a light syrup is 5 3/4 cups of water and 1 1/2 cups of sugar. So we're gonna go ahead and get that ready in our pot here. Okay, so I forgot to hit the record button. So what we have in here is just all of the sugar and the water that we need for the simple syrup and the figs. And what it says to do is to just gently boil it for 5 minutes. So this is still pretty cold, and we're just going to go ahead and warm this up and let it boil gently for 5 minutes, and I'll bring you back. The fig preserves have been boiling for about 4 minutes, and I noticed that there was just like this foam that was forming on top, and so I went ahead and skimmed that off. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know when you're cooking bone broths or anything like that, if the foam comes to the top, that's the toxic gross stuff that you want to skim off. And I haven't done a tremendous amount of canning with jellies and jams, but the time that I did, I know it said to skim off the foam that forms on the top. So I went ahead and did that, and hopefully I didn't shoot myself in the foot and like skim off something that's good. All right, so the fig preserve has boiled for the full 5 minutes, and now I'm just gonna let it cool off for just a minute just to get some of the steam to go away on this. And then what I'm gonna do with it doesn't call for it in the recipe, but I'm gonna go ahead and pulse it up so that it's not just a bunch of chunks of figs in the jars. It's gonna be kind of more of like a jam consistency. So we'll see how it goes. So we're done with that part. And I kind of am just curious what this tastes like, so I'm going to take one little bit with a fresh, clean spoon. That's really sweet. I like that. That's pretty good. Okay. So now what we need to do is, it says to add, let me make sure I get the right numbers here. Okay, so it says with this that what you want to do is you want to add, it says 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice per quart, or 1 tablespoon per pint. Or you can also add half a teaspoon of citric acid per quart, or a quarter of a teaspoon per pint. So I'm going to go ahead and go the citric acid route because I'm out of lemon juice. But I don't want to add it to the pot because I don't know how many of these jars it's actually going to yield. So I'm going to add them to each individual jar. Let's get started. Okay, so this one is a hot pack method. So what I'm going to try and do with this recipe, I have all the jars in here in nice and warm water, and they're all sterilized. So what I'm going to try and do is just pull them out one at a time, fill them up, put the lid on back on them, and then throw them back in the canner. We'll try and do it that way. And we're looking for a ½ inch of headspace with this recipe. All right, didn't do a good job of preparing beforehand, but now we have everything. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna wipe the rim. I have a little jar here filled with half water and half vinegar. I'm just gonna wipe the rim with that. Put our lid on it, and then tighten it, fingertip tight. And back into the canner, and we'll grab another one, and we'll just repeat this until we run out of room. So I need to fix one thing on that first jar. I didn't put the citric acid in there. And you really want to make sure that you put the citric acid in the, if it calls for citric acid or lemon juice or anything acidic, you want to, especially when you're doing a boiling water bath canner like we're doing, you want to make sure that you put it in there and in the right amounts. Otherwise, it can it won't be acidic enough to make it shelf stable. So you got to make sure that you do it. Even if you forget, you got to go back and redo it. So there we go. Wipe the lid again, or the rim. Really hot. All right, so now we are all done. We have some in this stock pot, and I think what I'm going to go ahead and do with that is just do a second batch. There's not enough in here. It's, you know, about to here on the pot. So I think I'm going to do a second batch and just probably do it in this pot instead and put a little towel on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just do that off camera. And then, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to crank the heat and bring it up to a boil. And once it gets to a rolling boil, like going crazy, then we're gonna set our timer for 40 minutes. That is the time for anything pint size and smaller. The recipe only has times in there for pints and quarts, so we have to go up to the next size, which is gonna be the pint size timing on it. And you wanna look up the times for wherever you may be. This is for 1,000 feet elevation and below. If you're any higher than 1,000 feet, you're gonna have to add some time onto that, and I don't know what that is. You just have to look it up, and I'm sure you can find conversion tables and stuff like that. I took the lid off, turned the heat down, or turned the heat off, and let it set for 5 minutes, so now we're ready to pull them out of the canner. Here's what it looks like. I don't know if you can even zoom in there. So, here we go. And you can see all the little flecks and things that are in there. It looks really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let these set on the counter overnight. You want to let them go at least 12 hours, if not like 24 hours, totally undisturbed. So I'm going to let these set on the counter, and I'll bring you back tomorrow and we will find out if these gelled up or not, or if it's just going to be kind of like a syrup, and I'll bring you back and let you know. So we'll see you then. It's the next day here. It's been probably about 30 hours or so since we did this, maybe a little less. And we ended up with 6 of these half pint jars. 6 of these. I don't know if these are half pints, but whatever size these little jelly jars are. And 3 of these ones. And we had no losses on these, and all of them sealed. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a taste test for you guys. And also it did not end up, like, it's pretty syrupy. Most of them are about the same. So hopefully it'll still taste good. Okay. Liquidy. Smells pretty good. So I think it's probably more of like it's a syrup. It's not really a preserve, but we'll pretend it is and we'll call it a preserve. Probably if I put it in the fridge, it will solidify a little bit more, but that's really good. It's got like a very mild kind of fig taste to it. It's not super sweet. And it's just really good. I'd totally make this one again. So I'm gonna go ahead, put this one back into the fridge. I'm gonna store the rest of these ones for later. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you maybe learned something else new that you can add to your canning arsenal. Definitely recommend this. Again, it was a recipe from the National Center for Home Food Preservation. I can never remember what that website's called. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned anything, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below with what you guys are canning today or in general. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.